So when you think of the name Medusa, what pops into your head? Probably a pretty specific image, right? Snakes for hair, a terrifying face, that deadly gaze that turns people to stone. It's one of the most famous monster stories ever. But what if I told you that image is only one tiny piece of a much, much darker and more tragic story?
Yeah, what if we've been telling this story completely backwards? We're going to take a deep dive into this myth today, but we're going to look at it through a whole new lens, one that might just convince you that one of mythology's greatest villains was actually its victim.
To really understand Medusa, you can't start with the monster. You have to rewind. We've got to go all the way back to the beginning, before the snakes, before that stony gaze, and way before she was this creature being hunted by heroes. She was just a woman.
Okay, so look at this. This really lays it all out. On the left, that's the Medusa we all think we know, the monster. But on the right, this comes from the original telling in Ovid's Metamorphoses, and it's a completely different person. Not a monster born of evil, but a beautiful priestess who was assaulted and then unbelievably punished for it.
So who was she, really? Well, Medusa was a devout follower of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. She was known for her incredible beauty, and she dedicated her life to the goddess, taking a sacred vow of celibacy to serve as a priestess in her temple. Her whole life was about service and purity.
But that life of devotion comes to a sudden, horrifying end. And this is the critical part. The thing that changes Medusa forever isn't an evil act she commits. It's an act of violence that is committed against her, and it changes everything.
The god of the sea, Poseidon, saw Medusa's beauty and wanted her. But he didn't just assault her. He did it inside Athena's own sacred temple. I mean, this was a massive act of desecration. He violated Medusa's body, her sacred vows, and the holy ground of another god, all at once.
So what happens next is just this awful cascade of injustice. You'd think Athena would be furious with Poseidon, right? But instead, she turns all of her rage on Medusa, the victim. She punishes Medusa for defiling her temple by cursing her, transforming her beautiful hair into a nest of snakes and making her gaze lethal to any man who looks at her. And then, she's cast out, banished to live a life of total isolation.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter. Medusa's story isn't about a villain. It's the story of a victim who was transformed, blamed, demonized, and then ultimately destroyed for something that was done to her.
So let's get to the next chapter of her story, because believe it or not, the injustice doesn't stop there. Now, a so-called hero enters the picture, and he's here to finish the job.
So this hero is Perseus, and his big quest is to bring back Medusa's head. But just look at how he does it. This isn't some epic, heroic battle. He doesn't face her head on. He sneaks up on her, uses a mirrored shield so he doesn't have to look at her, and then he cuts her head off while she's asleep. It's less of a heroic slaying and more like a cold-blooded assassination.
And here's the final, disgusting irony. Her murder is celebrated. It's painted as this huge victory for mankind. Her severed head, the very thing that was her curse, her mark of shame, and her only defense, is taken as a trophy. Her suffering is literally turned into a weapon by the same world that caused it.
But even after all that, after being victimized, cursed, exiled, and then murdered in her sleep, Medusa's story still isn't over. As it turns out, her power was a lot more stubborn than her enemies ever imagined.
At first, it just seems like the final violation. She's dead, and now her killer, Perseus, is running around using her head as his own personal superweapon. Her power has been completely stolen and repurposed. But then, this amazing thing happens. The power doesn't just fade away. Her severed head keeps on working. It still turns people to stone. It still holds this dangerous, incredible power, even completely separated from her body.
And isn't that a fascinating twist? The trophy head, the thing that was supposed to be a symbol of her defeat, the proof that she was conquered, that actually becomes the very thing that cements her legacy forever. Her power simply refused to be silenced, making sure she would never, ever be forgotten.
So why does this ancient story still hit so hard today? Well, because in our time, Medusa is being reclaimed. People are looking back at her story and seeing her not as a monster, but as an incredibly complex and powerful symbol. This might be the single most important takeaway from her entire myth. Medusa isn't the monster in this story. She is the result of monstrous acts, of violence, of injustice, of victim blaming. She is a living, breathing symbol of what happens when a person is pushed far beyond their breaking point by a cruel world.
And this is exactly why she's become such a potent icon of justified rage and survival. Just think about it. She was blamed for her own assault. Her power was never aggressive. It was purely a defense mechanism, a reaction to trauma. Even after she was killed, she was still dangerous. Her rage was never a weakness. It became her strength. And her story shines a light on a terrible truth, that sometimes a system would rather destroy the victim than ever hold a powerful perpetrator accountable.
So we'll leave you with this last powerful thought. Medusa is the chaos that boils up when systems of justice completely fall apart. She's a timeless warning, and for so many people today, a symbol of the survivor whose righteous fury can, metaphorically, still turn old monsters to stone.